Hi.
Hello. Can you hear
Um,
me well?
yeah, I can hear you. I can see you.
Great.
All good. I'm assuming everyone can too. I just like to get started right away and not wait for
Okay,
people.
great.
They could watch it later or on YouTube or in the next 24
Yeah.
hours. So,
Yes.
I'm like still out of breath from running up and down the
So
stairs,
let's take a
trying to get
deep
my husband
breath.
to kill a cockroach. Hold on.
Yes. Take a deep breath.
And then like I feel like I killed it
I'm in
myself.
Florida and we kill cockroaches all day.
Oh
My
God.
daughter won't go to the bathroom without someone checking to see if there's a roach there.
Really?
I know the anxiety.
Yeah. Well, like it's worse than killing the cockroach, just like leaving it alive because then you know it's somewhere in your house and like you don't know when it's gonna get you. And they don't even do anything bad.
I know. I actually YouTubed it the other day because I was wondering, I said, we're going to be here for a while and I need to get rid of this fear for her. So like, how do we get rid of fears of spiders and roaches? And
Yeah.
they're called, in Florida, they call it palmetto bugs, but they look like a roach.
Yeah.
But, and they're saying, just let them play with it. And I'm like, no, that's not happening.
I actually just bought this like little bug tent thing for my kid at Target today. It was like $3. All right, an activity, cheap
Yeah.
activity. All right. Anyway, so thanks for everyone for joining so far. We'll just get started. You can maybe introduce yourself, your background a little bit, and your connection to mental health.
Sure. So my name is Matana Poupko Jacobs. I keep my maiden name, because I love it so much. When you come from the Poupko background, you don't give it up so fast for someone else's name. So I grew up in Israel. My parents moved there when I was 2 years old. I was born in Peoria, Illinois. I grew up in a very Beis Yaakov background. My parents weren't so much Beis Yaakov, but I went to a very Beis Yaakov school. If anybody knows the Israeli schools, I went to the BJJ of the Israeli schools. When I graduated high school, I did a year of Shirut Leumi in Hong Kong. And when I came back, I started my life in the high-tech world in Israel, and I got a very prestigious job in one of the largest firms in Israel. And I was loving life. Life was awesome. I was traveling the world. I think I was in every continent. I was making a lot of money. They gave me a company car. I was dealing with like the top security systems in Israel. Life was great. And I didn't want to get married. I'm like, why should I get married? Life is so, so great. But in the very ultra orthodox yeshivish world, that doesn't fly. So I was like 23, 24, and my parents really, really should like start dating. So I dated just to say I'm dating, but I really had like a huge single crowd of friends that it was phenomenal. And I dated just to be yote, to say, okay, I'm dating. Anyway, when it came to my husband, he came from America. He's actually from Queens, and we dated. He was in Israel dating some other girl. Anyway, we dated. We got married. We dated for 6 months on and off, and then I decided that I'm going to give up my career to move to America. I had to give up my career in order to start my life, because I knew that it would be too much for me to do both at the same time. We moved to America, and I decided that my sisters, I have two older sisters, very powerful women, very like the huge. We're all very driven in the world of working hard, playing hard, having fun. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to do that. I said, I can't get up at 5:30 in the morning, have 20 kids, get out to work, come home at 9 o'clock. Just not for me. So I said, if I do get married and have children, I want to raise them. So I left the whole career, which was a very big move for me. I moved to America. I had one, two, three children, and we were having a great life, really a great life. And my journey with mental illness started after baby number 3. And that's why I'm here to share my story. But I was just the regular traditional girl having a good life, just enjoying life. And then I had this big, big, big episode with mental illness, and it just changed my whole life from then. So that's who I am. And now I live in Far Rockaway. We lived in Florida for 1 year during my deep depression. I thought that the sun will help me, and it did not. It was actually the worst year of my depression. And we moved back to New York, but we still come back and forth to Florida. So that's why we're in Florida now.
Okay. So I'm sure we're all looking forward to hearing more about your background, your connection with mental health, your story, how it kind of hit you. I guess I'm interested to hear if like it was something that you never expected, like it didn't run in your family or anything, and just all right. So and I know a lot of our followers do have some connection to well, I guess everybody has a connection to mental health because we all have mental health, but some people,
Right.
a lot of our followers do have a connection to mental illness also, and and particularly it's meaningful to me the postpartum aspect of mental health. So that's something that I have taken a personal interest in. So I love these kinds of stories.
Okay.
And I know that like we do have a following that's interested in here. So we're gonna pass it along to those people too. So anyway, let's get started with hearing how it kind of hit you and your experience with your I don't know the details.
Okay, okay, fine. So I'll tell the story because I think what is so, I think, impactful about my story was that I didn't have shame from day one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because I was naive. I didn't have shame. So right away from the beginning, when it hit me, I was reaching out for help right away. And once I was talking about it, I realized how much everybody is really suffering with something. So how the way it happened was, so I had my third child. I was not postpartum, by the way. He was almost 3 years old. I traveled to Israel. Yeah, I would travel to Israel for my sister's son's bar mitzvah. Is everybody Jewish on this platform? Can I use Hebrew words or not? I don't know if
Jewish people are watching the lives, but yeah, we're usually
should I
using Hebrew words.
Yeah, we are. Okay, fine. Because on my podcast, I don't because my audience is everyone. So it was right before Shavuot, and I went to Israel, and I landed the day before Shavuot back in New York. And it was like a 3-day holiday then. And I was planning to have a full house. And I was always an entertainer, full house. And I was really jet lagged, really, really jet lagged. So the first night, I just said to my husband, you know what, I'm just going to fall asleep on the couch. And don't go learn in shul today. Just stay home. I fall asleep on the couch. 2:00 in the morning, I wake up, and I'm not feeling well. I'm really not feeling well. Now, I had no knowledge, nothing that had to do with mental health. Absolutely nothing whatsoever. Besides the fact that I had an aunt that was not well, but I always said, it's in your mind. It's in your mind. It's in your mind. You can get over it. And I always believed you can get over everything. So I didn't even. So when I was not feeling well, I really thought that I was dying. And I said, my husband's name is Ari. I said, Ari, I think I'm dying. He said, no, you're not dying. You're just jet lagged. You're not feeling well. I said, no, I'm dying. I feel like I'm dying. And he's like, no, just relax. Go upstairs into bed because I fell asleep on the couch. Go sleep in bed. I'm here. And I said, no, Ari, listen, I'm dying. I feel death. And my heart starts racing. I can't breathe properly. I'm shaking, sweating, start throwing up. And I said, Ari, call Hatzalah. I'm dying. And I start hysterically crying and saying, Ari, who's going to watch my children when I die? Who's going to take care of them? And he's looking at me thinking, like, what has happened to my wife? She goes back to Israel and comes back like this lunatic. Like, what is going on? And he's like, no. And I am a hypochondriac. So like everything goes from 0 to 100 right away. And I said, okay, Ari, please call Hatzalah. And within 45 minutes, I think, I was not talking already. I was already like not talking, in full like shivers. He decided to call Hatzalah. I wake up, there's, I think, between 7 to 10 Hatzalah men around me. Now it's in the middle of the night. They were all up anyway, so they came. And all I hear is, I hear them announcing something like cardiac arrest, like call like the big ambulance, take her to the hospital. And all I could think is like, who's going to be with my children? My husband can't leave my children. They're little. They were like I think my oldest was seven. And I said, you can't leave the children. So I was waking up already, but they didn't let me move or anything. And they said, you're going to the hospital right away. So we made a decision that my husband's going to stay home. I go to the hospital. Tell me if I'm going into too many details.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I mean,
I'm fine. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I go to the hospital. I'm awake and the whole time I'm already more awake in the ambulance. I recognize a few guys, and I'm like, am I dying? Like, am I going to be okay? They're like, just don't talk. You'll be okay. And they put oxygen on me. We get to the hospital. The entire night they're running tests on me. EKG, EEG, CAT scan, everything, blood tests, everything you can imagine. And I'm already ready for like the worst news. I'm really ready for the worst news. And they come back, and I think it was like 9 o'clock in the morning, and they're like, doctor comes in and he says, I have good news for you. You're all healthy. You're fine. You can go home. And I look at him like he's from Pluto. I said, I can go home? I almost died last night. Like, I'm not going home. Like, something's wrong with me. He's like, no, what you had was a panic attack, and it's probably going to happen a few more times. Take a brown bag, and you're just going to learn how to breathe into a brown bag when a panic attack comes. He printed out some literature about mental illness and what a panic attack is and anxiety. And he's like, okay, wrap your things up. You're going home. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know the first thing about what is like, and I couldn't even call my husband because it was Yantef. They called a taxi because Hatzalah gave me a card to call a taxi, I go home, and he was shocked to see me. And I said, Ari, I had a panic attack. And they said that's probably going to happen again. So he's very the opposite of me. If I panic, he's very low stress, very low stress. He's like, okay, fine. Do you want to go to sleep? Do you want to eat? I'm like, Ari, do you understand that I almost died? Like, what I had was not a panic attack. I know what I felt. Anyway, the panic attacks just increased. I must have had like 3 or 4 during Yontif itself. And within a few weeks, I was not sleeping. After a few times I was calling Hatzalah, the Hatzalah guy that was my husband's friend, he's like, listen, don't call the whole Hatzalah, just call me, I'll come, I'll just make sure that you're okay. And he explained to me what a panic attack does in our mind and what I'm going through and the fears. And I wasn't sleeping, and the non-sleeping was the worst part. Because I had so much anxiety, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating, I wasn't functioning. And this was when it was the slippery slope into depression. The panic attack took me into depression, into I'll never be normal again, I'll never live again, horrible thoughts, not eating, no appetite. And so this happened. So the first one was on Shavuos. Tisha B'Av was so bad that I called my my regular doctor, and I said, listen, I need help. I am losing it. I cannot live with this pain anymore. I don't know what is happening to me. I need you to find me somebody today that I could see. So he sent me to a therapist and a psychiatrist the same day. And I remember on the way to the therapist, I called my mom in Israel. My whole family lives in Israel. I called my mom and I said, Ima, get on a plane right now. I am really not well. Come take care of me and make sure I get the help I need, because I'm not willing to live like this anymore. I am so sick. I cannot. Now, what I was going through, because I was sharing it with her, I was sharing it with everyone, but she didn't know how bad it got. She said, can I finish my fast, or do you want me to get on the plane now? I said, no, finish the fast. I'm going to a psychiatrist. I'm going to a therapist. Finish the fast and get on a plane. She was there 24 hours later. I went to a psychiatrist. He put me on meds that I was suicidal on the first time. And I always say, and I'm going to say this to anybody that listens, and it's so important. If you go to a psychiatrist, get recommendations that it's a psychiatrist that will hold your hand through the process of medication. Medication is so dangerous. Medication is so, it could be so amazing and so dangerous. And it could save your life, and it could really harm you. And it's so important to be with somebody that monitors the first week or 2 or 3, or that you have open communication. But the first few days and weeks is a very hard road with medication, and it could be either amazing or horrible. And again, that night I ended up in the hospital because I was so sick from the medication. And then I called my aunt, that is a psychologist in a therapist in the city, and I said, give me the top psychiatrist, top one. My husband's like, no playing around with brain surgery. This is brain surgery. We need to find you the top psychiatrist. And we went to Dr. Parker in the city, and he sat with me for 3 hours explaining to me what a panic attack is and how it's related to depression and what I'm going through and how it came along. And he really drew a map for me about what I was going through. And he also drew a map of the hope. How do I go back to wellness? How do I get better? And how do you live after a panic attack or with panic attack? How do you overcome depression? And it was like, you mean I'm going to be okay? I remember sitting there, and I said, you mean I'm going to be okay? I was crying and crying. I said, I have 3 children. I cannot be a crazy woman. I need to be able to take care of them. I need to wake up in the morning. I need to be able to get out of bed and shower them, carpool them. Like, I need my life back. I said, I'm not willing to live like this. It's not an option. And he said, you can, and it's going to take time. And he put me on a whole cocktail of medication, but he explained to me exactly what drugs was in each pill and what it was doing and what to monitor and to be in touch with him. And we really, after a few months of being on this medication, I started feeling less depressed. But I was sleeping a lot. I wasn't functioning. I was still afraid to drive on my own. I was still afraid of a panic attack. I was still afraid of losing my mind suddenly or doing something that my mind will tell me to do that I was afraid to do, that it was wrong. And it was a very long journey to getting better, very long journey. And I was determined to heal. So I started going to healers, and I must have been in 3 different therapies. One was for trauma, one was for depression, and one was just to deal with life. I was huge into therapy. I always say that if I ever win the lottery, I'm going to have 5 different therapists for every day of the week besides Friday and Shabbos, and I'm going to start my day with a private yoga session and a therapy session, because I think that is like the ultimate joy in life, is therapy. And I went through a lot of therapy and a lot of meditation and yoga. I did yoga every single day. And that's another thing that my psychiatrist told me. If you want to heal really long term, you need to do proper eating, exercise, yoga, and meditation. And I don't know many psychiatrists that would say that. They usually put you on medication and just say, c'est la vie, enjoy, like, contact me next time you need to talk to me. And he really explained to me what the power of gratitude is, and what's the power of a positive mindset, and what do we do, what's neuroplasticity. And it took me how many years? I'm trying to remember. My daughter is 6 now. It took me, I think, a good 3 years. A good 3 years to heal. To say, okay, I'm ready to get off my medication slowly. And it was a process that I'm willing to try to get off medication. I tried twice before and it didn't work, but I thought I was ready after so much work that I was doing. And I finally got off medication because I wanted to have another baby. I said, you know what? I think I'm ready to have another baby. And my doctor wouldn't let me get pregnant on medication. So he said, if you want to get pregnant, you need to make sure that you can be without medication. So that was the transition. And I believe in my core of my heart that the thing that tipped me over was my birth control. I believe that I was like on a slippery slope because I wasn't dealing with my emotions my whole life. But the breaking point, I think, was my birth control that I was taking. And people are not aware about how hormones affect our emotions so drastically. And it's like a ticking bomb. And you could be on one birth control for a while and be okay, and then one little, and as women, we evolve all the time, and our hormones are constantly changing. And I really believe that it was a wrong dose for me. And one of the first things that I did was get off my birth control in order to feel like I felt the anxiety. I felt my body vibrating when I was on birth control. I'm very sensitive to medicine, very, very, very sensitive. And that's why I had a lot of side effects when I was on my meds for depression and anxiety. But one of the biggest things that I talk about is for women that are not feeling well postpartum or during pregnancy or even 2 years afterwards, check your hormones, check your hormones. It could be something so simple to balance out, or just make sure that you're on the right vibrations of your body, of what you're supposed to be, because we work so hard as women. We really work hard. And on top of that, if we take medication, it really affects us. It really, really does. So make sure that if you're on something that doesn't feel right, don't ignore it. Go to your OBGYN and tell them your side effects. Go on a support group for birth control that might be wrong, and find out what might be right. Go to a holistic doctor. Try something else. Keep on trying until you find the one that is good for you. And that's what I was really on a journey of just finding and trying and trying. And people always ask me, why didn't you give up? Because the trying was really hard. It's not like, oh, I tried and it was perfect. I tried and there was a lot of failure and a lot of nights of me saying, I'm done trying. I cannot live with this depression anymore. The black was so black. The pain was so painful. And I felt like no one was understanding me. No one was understanding really, unless the person was the only person that I felt comfort with, it was with a person that was actually going through, had depression or understood panic attacks. I was able to find a lot of comfort from people that said, oh, this is real. What you're going through is really hell. And that understanding was comfort for me. And I always say, try to find a support group. Try to find a friend that went through what you're going through. There's so many resources now. Thank God we live in a time that mental health is something that's a priority. There's still a lot of stigma. There's still a lot of stigma, but there's more awareness and there's more support groups. Find the support group. Find the people that can hold you up and cheer you on. Find the books to read. Find the life coach. Find the therapist. Find the psychiatrist. Find them, because they're out there.
Yeah, and on our website, we always have stuff like resources that are out there. And I saw even some resources themselves came on here tonight and joined us. Chazkenu was on here.
Chazkenu, yeah. She's amazing, amazing, amazing.
Rachel Tuckman popped in. I don't know if she's still here or not, but she's always a good therapist that has puts good stuff out there on Instagram.
Yes.
That's where I
Right. Right. There's so much out there.
That we can find. Yeah, good. Our website is jproactive.com. If you haven't checked it out yet.
Yeah.
The followers.
Yeah. So one of my I remember one of my moments that I was ready to give up. I was standing in my window and I was like, God, show me that you're around because I don't feel you. And I feel so alone in this darkness. But I said, if you heal me, I will forever pay it forward, forever. And I'll be the biggest advocate to breaking the stigma. And I remember the tree that I was looking at, and I call it my tree of hope because I was like looking out the window and I was looking at that tree, and it's going to be my tree forever. And when I started getting better, I was like, this is it. I have to do something. And that's when I started my business of Charge to Recharge and my podcast. My podcast is what my goal in my podcast is to bring more people to speak out and tell their story. That ordinary people feel okay sharing their story and not feeling that they're damaged goods because they have postpartum, because they have a mental illness before they got married. Some people have mental illness before they got married, or they were born with it, or it runs in the family. And there's still a ton of stigma around it. And it really is hard to speak out loud and get help when they feel that there's such a stigma around it. So the podcast is both sharing stories and professionals.
Cool.
And it's an inspiration to see how many people are devoted to breaking the stigma and are working so hard to live. So many people. So I tell my audience that they're my inspiration because I hear from them their stories, and I thought I worked hard to live. What they go through to live is unbelievable, the suffering that people go through to live another hour. So it's really incredible. It's really, and my hope and my dream is that schools will put into their curriculum awareness on mental health, not only biology and chemistry. They'll also talk about mental health awareness from a young age. Let them talk about their emotions, let them talk about their feelings and their fears, and be okay with it.
Yeah, that's always something we're thinking about. I mean, at Project Practice, we talk about it all the time. Like, and I know there are other organizations that are trying to work their way into schools too. Madragos is one.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of school programming. I think we're really getting somewhere in like advancement with mental health. I think it's awesome to see, like, just to hear someone, I mean, like you, who's so open about it and is spreading it. Every person that you affect, they affect someone else, and it's just like it's such a ripple effect, and it's so nice to see.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Tell us more about your podcast then. Is it when do you do it? Who comes on?
Okay, so we release an episode twice a week. One is on Tuesday we either give a personal story of like a struggle with mental illness and how they're overcoming it or overcame it. So, for example, Chizkenu was on our podcast. I think her story is like, wow. It's really from the background she came from and the way she's speaking so out loud about it and supporting so many. I know so many women that listen to my podcast that tell me that Chizkenu saved their lives. So the podcast either has a story like Chizkenu, or I bring a neuroscientist or a therapist or a healer, and just different ideas, because I believe that it's not one size fits all. And I needed to try so many things till I found the pattern that worked for me. That's the recipe that worked for me. And the recipe doesn't end once you heal. I happen to have healed, and I haven't been on medication, I think, for 7 years. And I feel like if I can notice, I don't have panic attacks often, maybe once a year, but it's not a full blown one. But I recognize when my anxiety goes up. It's a constant work on it. So the podcast is designed to find your cocktail that works for you, whatever works for you and your family and your finances. There's so much that goes into healing. There's so much that goes into healing. I had an amazing support my family, my husband, my brothers and sisters, my parents, my friends were incredible, incredible. Not everybody has that. So you have to find what works for you. You have to find the people around you. And sometimes it's a group that you've never thought that will help you. And sometimes it's a podcast, and sometimes it's a live stream like this. Sometimes it could be a million different things. And we're so fortunate that we live in a time that there's so much available. So find the cocktail that works for you, whatever connects to you. And you'll know, I always say, you have all the answers inside you, all the answers. Mm-hmm. You just have to close the background noise and go inside and listen.
Speaking of background, do you hear a beeping or? Okay,
I don't hear.
I'm not sure if I should get up and turn it off. And second of all, I want to remember that line. It's so cute. Find the cocktail that works for you. So remind me after when I forget.
Yes. Find the cocktail that worked for you, because it's really important that people shouldn't say, oh, they healed from depression like this. And don't go online and say, what medication are you taking? Have the professionals do the work. It's really like, it's so, our brains are so fragile. Like, you can ask, but don't act on it. Like, if something's giving you side effects, ask if other people are having that side effect. But be very careful with your brain and with your body and stuff like that. But I like when people hear stories on my podcast and different professionals. Like a few weeks ago, I had a hypnotherapist. I thought it would be like an ordinary podcast, and it exploded. People were like, I want to hear more about it. I want to try it. And people were like gravitating towards it because they just were connecting to it. There was another therapist that were talking about grief, and it really resonated with so many of my people in my audience, that they're dealing with trauma and grief. I wouldn't know that. And the amount I learned about mental health just by starting my podcast, so many things that I didn't even know about. Yeah. I'm here, so many people with borderline personality disorder. So then that's a huge stigma that people are not willing to talk about. We have to break the stigma on that, because there's so many tools out there. DBT, there's so much to help people that are struggling with borderline. So that's on Tuesday, and on a Thursday it's called Attitude of Gratitude, because one of the biggest things that helped me was gratitude. Really, gratitude. And I bought almost every book on gratitude. I practiced it, and I still practice it very, very much. And I believe that it helps me get through life now. It really helps me just glide through life. And let's say now in COVID, if not for my toolkit that I had over the years, I would probably not be able to function with my kids. I feel like God prepared me 9 years ago that I should have my toolkit for stress now, and have my gratitude now, that I can work with it when there's a crisis. So it's important to know that you bring your toolkit in life, and it's not just for mental health. It's for many crises that are going to happen through life, because that's life. Life is full of so many unknowns and surprises.
Yeah. Trying to think if does anybody have any questions, by the way? Anyone who's still watching and happens to be on right now? Any direction that you guys noticed to take the live? That was interesting. I don't know. It's always worth asking.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm so tired, so I keep forgetting what I was thinking. But do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I'm a huge advocate of not staying in pain and silence.
Yeah.
Not like, don't suffer. Yeah.
What have the people who came onto your podcast and shared their story? We also talk a lot about sharing your story when we talk to Mic Drop. We've talked about sharing your story with them a lot. And we found that whenever somebody opens up and shares their story, it ends up being like what I was saying before, like a big ripple effect, and more people want to share their story, or at least they, that person says, wow, like, I can't believe that someone's actually talking about this. And, like, it just has a huge, huge, huge effect, more than the person even realizes. You get feedback like that from the people who come on your
It's
podcast?
funny that you say that because we're coming next week will be a year for our podcast and it's 100 episodes. And I was asking my audience, should we take a month off and should we veer more to subjects? Because now it's whatever comes my way. I'm very into the right time, the right place. And over 4 people in one day emailed me or shared with me and said, please don't stop the podcast this direction because you motivated me to share my story and I'm helping now people in my community. Mm-hmm. It just gives them an inspiration and like, oh wow, there's a normal person that's sharing and they go through the roller coaster of life and that's okay and we can share and we won't be alienated from the community or from society. So definitely get it all the time. I also get a lot of people saying, wow, I can't believe you're sharing all the details. You're not afraid. I said, what am I going to be afraid of? Like, and there is still huge stigma out there, especially in the frum community. Such a big stigma. They're like, are you not afraid that your kids won't get married? I don't know. Maybe they won't get married to the person that will be they'll be afraid of what I went through. Maybe they won't, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's not easy to have. I guess it also depends on your background, like the person's background and where they come from, the kinds of stigma that their family puts in them, that their community puts in them. Like everybody has their own reasons for not sharing, but it's really powerful, the people that get up there and spread it. Break stigma. Yeah.
And there's also like something that I don't talk about a lot because I don't know a lot about it, but the addictions and mental health are very connected. And we shouldn't look down upon addictions. We should really treat them just like mental health and mental illness. Like it's part of mental illness and there's so much shame around it. And people that are married to people that are addicts, there's shame around it and they don't get help. So I think next season we're going to go into that because I think a lot needs to be spoken about it. And there are so many that are struggling with it and families that fall apart because they don't get the proper help that they need because they're embarrassed. They feel defected, they feel it's wrong, and there's not enough conversation on it.
Yeah, for sure. We've had a few different types of addiction being spoke about on our page. We had porn addiction, love addiction, food addiction. We talked about it a little bit. Yeah, and we definitely have stuff about that on our website. It's really
What is love addiction?
We definitely, it's interesting. It's kind of like the addiction of needing, I don't want to say it wrong, so if anybody on here is a professional and wants to say it, all right, you know what? You got to just check out the video.
I'm curious. I've never heard of it, but it sounds like something that needs deep connection and admiration and passion, not physical but emotional.
It's not. It was all about my 3-year-old's up. It was. You want to come over here? Come into bed. It was all about that need for emotional connection, and usually there's some kind of connection with trauma.
Right.
But I'll come sleep with you in a few minutes. Just lie down here. But yeah, no, definitely check it out. It was with Sephora. Yeah, you can sleep here for now. What was it? Gosh, I don't know. I'm so bad with names. It was a little bit ago. Sephora. I'll send a thing about it.
Yeah. Okay. But especially now during COVID and being home a lot, it can go both ways. It could be very comforting and it could be really toxic for the people that are dealing with mental health that don't have the help yet, it could be a
Right.
disaster. It could
Yes.
be a disaster. It's such a good time to get help now, because now the world, I say this a lot now, that the world is finally having a panic attack that we
Yeah.
experience all the time. So the
Yeah.
world is more empathetic to us, because now
Yeah.
the world, everybody's anxious now, and everybody's nervous, and everybody has fear. So now we have permission to talk about it out loud. So take advantage of the fact that the world is having a panic attack
Yeah.
and go get help, and don't live in the hell of isolation of not talking about it.
Yeah. It's true. That's what a few lives ago someone said that we were talking about whether the patients we had a psychologist on, and she was talking about whether her patient like that her patients with anxiety were actually the ones who were suffering the least right now, because the world was
Exactly.
catching up, like you said.
Right, exactly. I have a mastermind for people that deal with mental health, and we were all saying how we're supporting now
Yeah.
the people around us that always
Yeah.
say just get over it, because they have the tools. We have the tools. We're
Right.
always breathing properly. We're
Yeah.
always prepared for crisis. We're always prepared for we don't know how we're going to feel in the morning.
Right.
So yeah. So we have it in us. Thank God. Thank God. I always say God prepared us,
Yeah.
gave us the tools. Yeah. But if someone didn't get help, go get help now. It's a perfect time to get help. It's a perfect time.
Yeah. That is definitely an important message. All right. Well, apparently both of my kids are still up somehow. So if you can
Okay.
end us off with a message that you maybe want to leave anybody who's watching with, and anybody who will watch.
So my constant message is that even in the darkest days, there's always sunrise sometime. And sometimes the sun doesn't come up for a while, and it depends where in the world you live. So there are places that the sun shines for 6 months, and then it's darkness 6 months, and it's like that in our body. But the sun always comes up eventually, and it's like that with our emotions. Keep on trying, keep on trying. It is so worth it. The joy that I live today, and I had the funnest life, the funnest life before I got sick. I did the joy that I have today after overcoming my struggles. I live on a higher vibration of life because I felt pain on the deepest level. So keep on trying, because it's so worth it. It is so worth getting to the other side. And my slogan is, in mental health, together is better. There is nothing better. You can't survive alone in mental illness. You just can't. It's too dark. It's too hard. It's lonely. It's just impossible. So get the help you need. Get the support you need. There are books. There's groups, online groups. There's so much out there. And even I always say, if you're not financially able to go to a therapist, there's always a community group. There's always something that you can go to. Find it. There's a friend. Start talking. You're going to find somebody that went through what you went through. And just by talking about it is already a huge help. So two things. The sun always comes up. The sun always comes up, and it's worth it. It's such a bright sun. It's so beautiful. And also together is always better mental health.
Okay, really. Thank you so much. And if people want to find your podcast and find more about connecting with you, they just go to your page on Instagram?
Yeah, they go on Instagram, and I think the podcast is, I'm pretty sure it's on my bio. Hope to recharge. It's Hope to Recharge.
Great. Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Okay. Thank you.
Inspiration. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.